Marco Reus. Daniel Malen! Wonderful!
Fantastic from Reus. Jude Bellingham, that's excellent. Jude Bellingham, this is absolutely brilliant. Jude Bellingham! Absolutely magnificent.
Reina, brilliant from the American. Just like that.
Graceful. Sally Hoods down for Anthony Modeste.
Not a bad idea. And there it is for Coco for Borussia Dortmund. The long wait is over. Unbridled joy in the Revier Derby.
Hey, welcome to the BVB podcast. My name's Jake, joined as always by Carver. Feeling pretty good spirits right now. Pretty good weekend. Carver, how are you doing?
Pretty good weekend. Pretty good. Jake, it was the best goddamn weekend of my life. I mean,
you didn't get hypothermia.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Still need to get checked out for that. I mean, yeah. Well, I don't want to get into St. Louis at least now, but I mean, of course, top of the table, first time since the 1920 season. Although I saw that stat, but I honestly cannot remember when I thought it was the 18-19 season whenever we blew the 9-point lead. I don't remember being.
When you said 1920, I thought you meant like
19.
The year 1920. I was like, this is not. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't remember when we were in first at any point during the 1920 season. But anyway, regardless, it's been a long time, and could not be happier to be here. I would not have ever even expected this in my wildest dreams. I said it every week now for the past few weeks, but in fall, I was like, maybe we get top 4, top 3 if we're really feeling it. I mean, even on our mid-season review with our survey, I mean, the whole fan base of our show was thinking the exact same thing. So I'm on cloud 9.
Yeah, very, very negative halfway through the season. And then, of course, we all know what happened. And we talked about it a lot last week. It was like a couple results. No, I mean, the streak ended, obviously. We lost to Chelsea. We drew against Schalke, with it being Schalke especially disheartening. And so this was kind of like the moment where, like, okay, are we going to be the Dortmund we know, love, and despise, or that breaks our heart? Or, like, are we going to be able to push through, persevere, and keep things rolling? And holy hell, did we keep things rolling and like go beyond that. 6-1 win, first Köln. Incredible scenes. I tweeted at one point, I was like, well, our score predictions are wrong, so never listen to the podcast again. Because at that point, when I put that out, I didn't realize, I forgot that Adam's prediction was 4-1. So it could have ended at Adam's prediction, but
I was just about to say that. Yeah. Right when you tweeted that, I was like, well,
apologies to Adam. I overlooked that. But as far as, I don't even remember what our predictions were, but I knew it wasn't how the game was going.
I think we both had 3-1s, if I'm not wrong. You might have had like a 3-2.
Actually. Yeah.
It was a party. I mean, we usually, I think we have like 2, maybe 3 of these games every season of just like battering another team. So could not have come at a better time, in my opinion, because you have the break. You have players that can finally get some much needed rest. You have players that could hopefully finish up their stints with recovery. I mean, Adeyemi, Brandt was a question mark for the Köln game, so I'm imagining he'll be pretty much good to go against Bayern in 2 weeks. I mean, you can keep going down the list. Kobel. So it was the perfect confidence booster going into Der Klassiker on April 1st. But yeah, the lineup here, Kobel, muscle problems were fixed up, but it looked like he caught a little bit of an illness, so he was out for this one. Back 4 of Rierson, Schlotterbeck, Soule, and Wolf. Then you have sort of like almost like a midfield trio at times of Dahoud, Bellingham, and Guerrero back in the midfield with Rapha. Up top, Malen, Haller, and Reus. Did you have any thoughts on how we were looking to line up?
I know we talked a little bit about like the 6 situation and what that might look like. And I guess the answer is to play 8s and 10s. I don't know exactly. The answer is no 6s. Let's just attack. I guess Bellingham could maybe sitting slightly back in that sixth position, maybe a little more. I don't really know, but it was just interesting seeing, I think, Dahoud and Guerrero. And I mean, Bellingham's always going to be in there, but Dahoud was an interesting one. After seeing Rapha's performance the other week, it made sense that we're going to see him in the midfield again, especially with the performance and just the injuries we have. So that wasn't a surprise. I think it was more Dahoud, which was talked about on the broadcast too, knowing that he's not going to be here, but they keep saying he's going to have a role. So, but we haven't seen him. So what's that role going to be? Just so interesting to see him slot in, but not mad at all, because boy, was this a performance, especially by Rapha. And maybe we just jump into it now, the Rapha in midfield conversation. And if I want to cop anything as far as me throwing a lot of heat at Rapha and saying, I'm done with him, over it, blah, 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 blah. He's not a midfielder, because why has he been playing left back for the last 10 years if he's a midfielder? I'll take midfield Rapha all day. I will take it. My main frustration was him playing left back and getting so far out of position and doing all these wild things on the other side of the pitch and not holding down that left back position. That, like, I have no problem with Rapha being great and banging in goals and getting these assists. Fantastic. But I think my main beef was in frustration was him getting in the middle and the right side of the pitch as a left back and getting so drawn out of position. So, I mean, people can say I'm flip-flopping if they want. I don't really care. This is where I stand. I don't know if I can defend myself. I don't know if I have a leg to stand on, but I'm just saying how I feel.
Well, the feelings of criticism is not exclusive to you. I mentioned right before we started recording, when we had Stefan on here, we were doing this, we're all saying the same thing, that Guerrero just looks like kind of like a lost cause at this point, at least in the defensive back line. And I tweeted also a few weeks, even before he started playing in midfield, that if the plan, I mean, this was a few weeks ago, but if the plan of the club going forward was to not extend with Rapha and go with Bensebaini for the sake of stability, that's fine. But there needs to be more investment than just Bensebaini, because then you have someone who is still a bit of a question mark at a little bit higher of a level. And if something happens to him, what happens then? You're kind of in the exact same position again of just looking back there thinking, I have no idea who's going to be playing left back. I mean, of course, you have Rierson, but I just don't think, obviously, it's not his natural position. And then also, we're trying to plug Rierson in other holes too. So there needed to be more investment than just Bensebaini. And it looks like, at least according to reports from the Ruhr Nachrichten, reporting that Dortmund are ready to offer him an extension. His role in the back line would probably be non-existent with this new offer. And I'm pretty satisfied with it. I mean, you got to think of not necessarily what Guerrero cannot do, but what can Guerrero actually do whenever he's put into a position that sets himself up for to succeed. I mean, just looking just these last two Bundesliga games, the man has 3 assists and 2 goals in the span of 7 days. So, and not to mention, I mean, he was just involved with so many other goals and build up or you name it. So
I was just going to say, maybe we'll talk about it more when we get into the goals, but he just looked like he was having fun, but just toying with people.
He looks happier. Yeah. So I like having at least one left back on the team, and then a player who can play left back if needed in Guerrero. And then you can do the same thing with Rierson too. I'm all for the depth. So I think this is honestly the right move here to keep Rapha in this squad for the depth, the versatility, the dynamism in the midfield. I mean, of course, we're going to need someone to be more of a creative player as well. I mean, I'm happy for him, and really, I think this is the right move.
How do you see the midfield looking moving forward? I guess not this season particularly, but next season. And the Jude thing. Maybe we don't get in the Jude thing now, but or we do. If Jude is here, I guess if Jude stays at Dortmund, which, as we talked about, it's been a few weeks. We talked about before, seems more likely, which is how the team is performing and our ambition now. Maybe it is an option for him to stay. But how does that midfield look with Guerrero now a midfield option and like a healthy midfield? Like, is he just kind of? Is it more like who's in form gets a spot? Because it seems like we have with him in there for consideration, especially if Jude is still with us next season. Just seems like a lot of these kind of attacking midfield options, and especially I don't know if Kamada is still on the table. Maybe this Rapha thing changes that. Yeah. But like, what does the midfield look like?
Well, either way, I mean, I've said it a bunch of times now, but it's a good problem to have for a coach. You know, I'd much rather have Terzic having a lot at his disposal, trying to figure out what works best for the team, rather than having bare bones and the lineups picking themselves. You know, I think it is probably just. I mean, I'm interested to see too how the role that the club is going to offer him, because again, I think Brandt is starting to slip a little bit more centrally, like you mentioned with Kamada too. Anton Stock from Mainz. I mean, I know the club too. I saw reports that they've been interested in for a few years now, but I have as well. I mean, he can play in the number 6 if needed. He can play in the 8, you name it. So I'm going to be interested to see how we would line up as well, especially too if Royce is going to be maybe a little bit more of like a rotation player. I'm not sure, but right now I would probably still have Jude, obviously, if he's going to be here. Still waiting on his the word for his future, which I think during this international break, we're going to get a lot more clarification on players like him, players like the Royce situation, the Hummel situation. So I'd have Jude if he's still here. I'd still have Chan as my number 6. And then Brandt, Royce maybe switching off between the left and middle side, and then slotting in Guerrero maybe as a creative player when needed. But again, it just depends. It's a good problem to have, having all that depth. You know, you're going to have a lot of congested fixtures and everything. And if you want to be ambitious with going for maybe more than one competition, that's the kind of numbers you need.
Yeah. And I think looking at the depth, I mean, this is something which helped us in 2023 when the season started up again, was like we had depth, like people were healthy. We had all these options. So it's definitely not a problem to have. It's a good problem to have. And especially when you look at the versatility of these players like Royce and Brandt, and throw Reina in there, can play centrally. They can play in the midfield, or they can be more attacking options higher up the field. And then you have Rapha, who, when we haven't really seen it, but I'm sure throw him in the front 3 if we need it, or he can play in the midfield like we're seeing. And of course, that gives the left back a little bit of depth too. Although that might make me mad, depending on if he doesn't play that left back role. Say we put him in left back and he doesn't play that role, I'd be a little upset. But it's good to have like the versatile. That word just sounded very wrong in my head. But it's good to have the versatility and those versatile players in like those depth positions. Like you have depth all around the field with the same players. Obviously, the issue is if someone goes out, but it's good to have depth in multiple spots. So it's not really a problem. It's just like interesting to see how Terzic figures it out. But hey, nothing really wrong with it. You went through the lineup. I mean, anything else on Rapha in the midfield, or should we get into this game other than the fact that it was just Rapha like having fun?
Yeah, so we went over the lineup already. I just right out the gate in this game, I loved the lots of movement in the midfield. You know, players were active; they weren't passive. They were working for each other. Again, like you mentioned, players look like they're enjoying themselves a bit more too. Obviously, Rapha as well. I love how versatile we are in our attack right now. I mean, just so many different ways this team can punish you. I mean, the quick 1-2 football touch football that we always talk about, it's obviously very difficult to defend. One of those goals, the Haller goal. Did Haller get 2 goals? Now I'm blanking.
Yes.
He did his first one with the quick link up between him, Royce, and Guerrero. That quick 1-2 touch football, very, very hard to defend. I mean, we could break you on the break with pace, with Malen. We could stretch you wide. We could play centrally. Again, just a bunch of different ways that this team can hurt you and punish you. And that's what we got to see on display during this game. Just this team really going out there and putting the show on.
Yeah, and even so, starting with the first goal, I don't want to skip ahead over that, but that's exactly what we saw. The quick ball movement, 1-2 passes. having Guerrero in there, like being in those tight spaces where he can work really well. And so the movement starting with Wolf, and then the like 1-2, it was like multiple 1-2 link ups with Malen and Guerrero. Maybe it was just one. I'm watching the replay right now, and it's kind of Malen doing this crazy spin move around a dude, getting the ball to Guerrero, who just has like this nice, easy tap in. I mean, I don't think that the tap in was necessarily easy, but with his skill and like his first touch getting the ball like settled.
Yeah.
It looked so easy. And I thought Malen looked pretty good in this game too. He got the goal. I know we were texting about the goal. He probably should have had a couple. It was that same typical Malen stuff where his shots go right at the keeper. He got fortunate on one of them. Still went right at the keeper, but it deflected off his hands and went in the goal. But so this game specifically, I think per our conversation last week, I was watching Malen a lot closer as far as what his link up play and his passes. Like we know he has that skill, and it seems like it's obviously more disappointing in the finish. But I tried to focus more on that and less on his shooting. And I thought he obviously the assist with Guerrero just right off the bat was like amazing. So that made me a lot happier seeing him as like a starter. And it's like, yeah, still needs to work on the finish, but if you're creating these opportunities and moments, then cool.
Yeah, and again, just the stretching of the play. He made some good runs here and there as well, bringing that pace. Finally got to see some glimpses of that as well. I'll eat my words. I think Malen had a very, very good game. He came out and, for the most part, proved me wrong and just my doubts of his abilities, except for the finishing. Yeah, right. Even his goal was right at the keeper. It just had too much venom on it because, I mean, we talked about it plenty of times before too. The man has a ridiculous amount of shot power. I'm like, I sit here trying to rack my brain since he's been at Dortmund, trying to think of like how many players that I've watched closely that has that kind of shot power, especially with just how quick he can turn and fire them off too. It's not so much as he has, like a lot of the times when he shoots, he doesn't have all this time and space. I mean, he's in a box or he's like already on a half turn. So just to generate that sort of venom into his shots is very impressive. But yeah, he just kind of got pretty fortunate with some bad goalkeeping from the Cologne goalkeeper. And yeah, Malen netted one, also got 2 assists. It was a crazy half. I mean, I've loved Haller getting a goal too. Keep going back to the confidence boosters, but like, I mean, Malen was much needed for a confidence booster. Haller, of course, now people have been kind of starting to throw some question marks at him. We touched on him already, but he got 2 goals in this one. His first one on his left foot, kind of a little bit further than the penalty box. It was not an easy one. It wasn't a difficult one, but it wasn't an easy one either. So it was a good finish from him. It was a hell of a half.
And Royce getting his goal too. Which this is the one where Malen 100% should have scored this. But shot it right at the keeper, saved it, but like deflected out, and then Royce was there to put it away and got his 150th Bundesliga goal.
Yep.
Is now officially Dortmund's highest goal scorer, right? Correct?
Yep. Yeah, correct. Yeah. And he already was a club legend, but just continues to solidify himself as like the man at this club, which is it's just what a time to be alive, really. And it's cool that, you know, he was really like the first player that I took notice of when I became a Dortmund fan like a decade ago now. And it was a great shot too. I mean, it was fair play to Rapha for keeping his head up whenever he received the ball after Malen's shot. I mean, he could have easily just kind of real quick fired another one or sent an across too, which I just don't think we've been that successful with that kind of thing this season so far. But to keep his, a cool head, look up at Royce and just, what a cool finish from him. I mean, the way Royce strikes the ball is just super fascinating to me. Like with just his hips and the way he like places his feet after he strikes the ball too. It's interesting. And it was some top titty stuff hitting the side netting.
It was I just watched the replay again. There's so much happened in this game. And then second half, I had texted you that I was like, all right, I'm going to watch the second half later. And then I'm like, never mind, I'm going to watch it. But I was kind of like, I was getting ready for work and I was doing some stuff. So I didn't take in like it fully. I kind of just was hearing a lot. But I watched the whole first half, but I'm just trying to catch up and relive it. And that shot from Royce was it's like such a cheeky goal. It's like you had no right to score that with how much congestion there was in the box, and just to like dink it away. So like, I mean, it looked like a subtle little dink, and it's like, man, how dirty of you. So good. This match was it was like everything we needed it to be, as far as all the question marks we were having after the last two results. Can we keep pushing? I kind of said this in the beginning, but like, can we keep pushing? Can we actually make a run? Can we do this? Can we win this year? Can Haller, is Haller
going to get the goals? Yeah.
Rapha in the midfield, is that what it's going to need to be? And it was just the full culmination of yes. The answer is yes, we can do it. Haller, there should be no concerns with Haller. We talked about his fitness and stamina levels, and I know we were a little down on it because it seemed like he hadn't been performing it as well, and maybe we weren't playing directly through him on the pitch. But we also got to keep in mind, we had the Champions League games midweek, and he was still starting all those games. So you got to think of where he is fitness wise. And now look what happened with a week off. This was a full team performance, but this is what he can do still. He can still bang in these 2 goals, and then Royce stepping up and scoring 2 goals too. Because I know there's some, no one doubts he's a legend, but I think there's definitely been some question marks because there's been a little inconsistency with some minor injuries and a couple illnesses. So it's easy to think, well, maybe this is you know what I mean? Maybe we're not going to get much out of him this year, even though he's stepped in and made an amazing free kick, and he's been getting some goals this season. But this whole match, it was epic, and everything we needed to, I think, silence any doubts for the remainder of the season. We still got a lot of games left, but this gives me so much confidence moving forward.
And stepping away and looking at a broader sense at a collective level as well, you had so many question marks about this team at that sort of level as well. I mean, how are we going to perform against, we coming off the Riviera Derby, stumbling with our keeping up pace with Bayern in the league. Now you're back at home against an aggressive Köln side, and you're thinking well, are they going to bounce back against a team that's not going to give you space, a team that's going to continue pressing, that's going to press up high up the pitch, that's not going to give you that space to work with. And again, we answered all those questions. At 2 coming out the second half, how are we going to come out? Because usually the past few weeks, second half comes out and we've been kind of playing like a dud for the first 10 minutes. Sometimes we concede early on in the second half, yada yada. So it was very it was pretty shocking to me, but it was also just extremely impressive too, the way we played against this, again, very aggressive Köln team who continued to press high when they were down even 4-0. Right? I think they've scored 4, or at least 4 before they got run right before the break, but still, they're continued to just keep laying on that pressure on us, and we just, again, played out of the back. You could play it long. We played, even though I talked about the quick 1-2 touch football, we also had 23 more long balls than Köln this game. So there were times where we could, play it wide and play on the break with pace and stretch them wide. So it was really cool to see, again, how versatile we are and how we were able to go against a team who is pretty opposite of how Schalke was playing just a week prior.
Yeah, that's always something I've loved about this team too. I think when I first got into Dortmund, I was looking at them as a transition team, or obviously in transition, but more of a counterattacking team. But it's just because we're so versatile, we can kind of do it all. we can play with possession, we can play in transition, we play on the counter. We just have we just are threatening from so many different ways. And obviously, I go not just the last season, but the last couple of seasons, Haaland was a big part in that transition play because he was so fast. And it's as long as we get it, have a little outlet and get it up to Haaland, we can move. But we can still do that. It's obviously not the Haaland show anymore, and that's what I've loved about this part of the season, 2023 specifically, is we are getting goals around. That's what we needed. We were missing so many goals with Haaland leaving. I don't know why I'm backtracking so much to Haaland, but I think I'm just because everything we were go back to midway through the season and before that too, we were just like, I think there was so many question marks about like, can we get the goals? Are we going to be able to do it?
I was going to say, rightfully so. You're losing one of the best strikers in Europe, and then your replacement, of course, is diagnosed with cancer and is out for, I mean, at the time, we didn't think he was going to be in a Dortmund kit at all. So yeah, it's absolutely rightfully so to ask those questions of how is this team going to score goals exactly? And, you know, people at the time were looking at Moukoko and he was producing, don't get me wrong, but it's also like, that's not the kind of profile that's going to get you titles. It's just not. And especially just continuing to rely on youth. And of course, I mean, youth is deeply rooted in this club, but it's just, you can't rely on them solely as your bailout almost for those kind of games. And now we're starting to look a little bit more like a cohesive unit and have a little bit more threat to our attacks. And again, very versatile how we can punish you. So it's cool, man.
And I think, I mean, another thing that plays into it in the excitement and the hype is like, I think 2 weeks ago when Brandt went out, we were so concerned because Brandt's been the guy. And to, again, full team effort, almost like next man up mentality, even though it's like a Rapha next man up shifting from left back to the midfield. But still, like when we were worried about where our creativity is going to come, especially with Royce was kind of out and Brandt was out, Brandt just went down and we're like, well, what's going to happen now? Like, is it Reina? Is it like, who's going to be able to step up? And it's Rapha, and no issues. And I know this game obviously got out of hand, and we're not going to fly the rest of the season winning games like this. We're going to have some tough ones and it's going to be hard, but I don't know. I'm just like so hyped, and I don't think I'm overreacting. I don't think this is like taking too much confidence from this win. It just like solidifies the excitement and the reasons why we should feel like there's a realistic chance. We're getting down to like the final stretch to where, because I don't think it's bad to say like most Dortmund fans, like, yeah, we're hopeful, especially with this 10 game win streak we had, but there's probably still some doubts. Like, yeah, Bayern's probably still going to pull away, but I'm just like so confident at this point.
And again, rightfully so. You look at our record and we have not lost in the league since November, and we've only taken one loss in all competitions since November. So it's a rightfully so to have this sort of confidence. And credit to Terzic too for putting Guerrero in the midfield and knowing that he can be that creative player when we needed someone like him. And Brandt goes out, and Royce was still a question mark for a while too around that same time. And of course, Jude is a player that can drive the ball forward. He can be creative as well, but you need someone to help him out. I mean, Jude cannot do everything in the midfield. He just can't, especially in a game in these last few games where, you know, Chan has been suspended too. So, I mean, you need help in that midfield. And I think Terzic, you know, credit to him for kind of picking that out and reacting and tweaking the system a bit to still get results out of this team, which is exactly what he did. I mean, a 6-1 is a huge, it's a huge statement. And that's what I think this game was overall. It was a statement. It was a powerful performance. It was dominating. And again, just exactly what you needed going into Der Klassiker.
I mean, any other points? I was kind of ready to transition a little bit, but any other points from this game? Anything you want to hit specifically before we
just rolling? I mean, I know Terzic, I think, also did a pretty good job of just throwing in a lot of the subs towards the end of the game to try to maximize as much as you can out of those subs. Nothing really came of them, unfortunately. I think they were all pretty disappointing, but still, they got some minutes on the field. I mean, Meunier, hasn't been playing much at all. I don't think, at least in the last few months, has not played since before the World Cup, really. So good to get him some minutes, a little bit, maybe a little bit more up to fitness. Modeste some more minutes. You have Reina and Hummels. Rota got to come on as well, so nice to get him back in the bully. I guess that was really it. Yeah.
The next thing I wanted to look at was just injuries. I know because obviously there's some guys who went. Brandt is the one we're like hoping to come back soon, and Kobel. And now that we have the international break, we have another week off. Great, looking forward. I mean, the last thing I saw, I don't know if you've seen more recently, but Brandt was set for an early April return. Obviously, the Der Klassiker is April 1st, But I'm thinking like with how close he seemed this match, I'm hoping he's definitely going to be back for this game. Adeyemi, what I'm looking at now says a few days, so he could be coming back too. So we'll have that option. Ochan was out for a cold. Makoko is also set for early April. I don't know if you've seen anything different, but those are the ones that in Kobo, obviously, I don't know if I mentioned that one, but like we potentially have these 4 or 5 guys back as options for Der Klassiker.
Again, the international break could not have come at a more perfect time. I mean, the boys desperately need this 2-week break here to just, rejuvenate a bit, collect themselves, and get in the right mindset for this game against Bayern. I think, and I'm not I don't think I'm in the minority on this. I think this team needs to go out and fight for a win at Bayern. Don't just settle for a draw, and don't just try not to lose. I think you need to go and just grab this game by the balls and try to get a win in Munich. Because if you settle for a draw, of course, I don't think Bayern are going to drop many more points this season. And don't forget, right after Bayern, we have Leipzig in the Pokal. It's the Pokal, of course, but then you have Union Berlin right after that in the league. So we have pretty much the 3 hardest fixtures all season within the span of 7 days. So again, much needed for these next 10 or 12 days for the players to get in that right mindset of, boys, the finish line's right there. I mean, go out and just finish the job, and let's bring home the silverware.
So April 1st, Der Klassiker. April 5th, the following Wednesday, is Leipzig. Are you, put your coach's hat on, which I know you have anyways. I mean, there's no way, there's no like reservations with Bayern like that. This is the most important game, right? And you kind of throw everything at it, like no consideration or thought, I would feel, for the Leipzig game. Because at this point, this Bayern game is more important than Pokal to me.
It is more important to me. The only slight pushback I have is just throwing everything at them, just because, again, we have those 2. I mean, Berlin the following week after, and I don't want to obviously send anyone back onto the injury list. So, I mean, I know Terzic is obviously smarter than both of us, so he's not going to rush anyone back. But maybe players like Adeyemi will come on as like an impact sub or something like that. But I can imagine maybe Brandt getting a start. And yeah, definitely just having that mentality of throwing the kitchen sink for everyone that's available for that game. I would say everyone who's still a bit of a question mark, just, be cautious, because you have 2 hugely important games just following that.
I do want to shout out Bayer Leverkusen. I feel like I copped some heat for saying that I'm going to watch more of their games now after they played in St. Louis. And I don't know, seeing them in person makes me want to watch their games. I did say I'm not going to be a Leverkusen fan. I'm just might watch them. I'm just might watch them. I was definitely a Leverkusen fan on the weekend though, when they were playing Bayern. No problem admitting that. I will. So, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. We don't have to get into the game or anything, but like you said, we're top of the league. Bayern dropped these points. Leverkusen beat them, kind of helping us out a ton, and we're sitting top of the league because it's been this back and forth. It's like we're tied on points. We get in the lead for a day, and then Bayern plays the next day, and they're back on top, and so now we have this lead, which is why this match. I mean, this is always an important match, but it is the most important match right now because this is like the title winning match. Yeah. If we can take care of business here. I
mean, yeah, Munich have really been stumbling, in the league, just the Bundesliga this calendar year. I mean, you take their 3 draws right out of the gate in January. That really helped us catch up a bit. And then they have 2 losses in their last 5 games now. You have the Gladbach in mid-February, and then, of course, just this past weekend against Leverkusen, which Leverkusen outplayed them. I mean, just plain and simple, I think they pretty much ran them off the pitch almost. Of course, Munich were missing some vital players in Musiala, Choupo-Moting, which is crazy to say in 2023 that Choupo-Moting would be vital to the Munich squad over Sadio Mane. But
nevertheless, like they're extending his contract too. Like,
yeah, it's crazy. But nevertheless, I mean, of course, you had Gnabry, and Coman was on the bench too for Bayern, but still, they are stumbling a bit. And this would be a good time to kind of hit them while they're not in their best form. And I retweeted on our page I think it was either today or yesterday that Musiala picked up a torn muscle fiber somewhere. I honestly cannot remember where in his leg.
Hamstring, maybe.
Hamstring. So he'll be out for at least a few weeks is what I read. So I think at the very most he'll be maybe an impact sub against Dortmund, and I think that's maybe rushing it. So that's gives you a little bit more glimmer of hope, because pretty much everything runs through Musiala at the moment at Bayern. I mean, they have top quality out the ass, but Musiala just runs that team. So having him out would be pretty huge for us, of course, but even more of a bit of a confidence booster. But this is still at Munich. And again, I cannot overstate enough that Munich, they act like champions. So, I mean, as someone who's watched the Bundesliga for the last 10 years or so, I mean, Munich just act like champions. They go for the jugular. They don't give up. They continuously beat down opposition. So it's going to be a hell of a match. And I really hope our lads are up to it, which I think, honestly, I mean, a lot of times in recent years, I think we haven't been up to it mentally, but this team just has something a little bit different about them. You know, they go at an individual level, go at a collective level. Either way you want to put it, I think this team has a little something special. And you know what? I don't want to minimize that. They have something special going on about them. I don't want to say a little.
I'm going to say one thing to backtrack just a little bit. Munich acts like champions for the last decade because they are the champions.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they didn't stumble on first place for 10 years running now.
Yeah. So I'm not going to break down every fixture or anything, but just looking ahead at and we have to do our business, right? That's the most important thing. We have to go out and win our games. We can't just like hope that Bayern stumbles. And going into their Klassiker, like my concern is they are going to come back after the international break. Like, I mean, they're playing at home. They're going to want to beat us regardless, but especially like coming off this loss for them is a lot more dangerous for us anyways, because they're going to want to a comeback result. You know what I mean? Like they're going to fight even harder. So it is like, it's great that we have the international break, but this is also, it's always a dangerous time to play them, but maybe the most dangerous time to play them, like coming off a loss.
Coming off a loss.
Them. But looking ahead at their schedule specifically, I think if you look at the Bundesliga schedule, like the last end of the stretch of the season, like they probably have an easier go than we do, playing Hoffenheim and Hertha and Schalke and Köln. Like Leipzig's in there. And again, I'm not going to just like hinge on the hope that because we have to do our business. But I will say, so right after we play them, they have Freiburg in the Pokal and then Freiburg again on the weekend, which I think is a benefit because it's hard to play a team back to back. It's two separate competitions, but it's like if there's a stumbling block somewhere like that, I think them playing Freiburg back to back is kind of it can only help us. I think. I don't know. I could eat my words later, but
yeah. I think it's honest. I mean, I'm not trying to disrespect Freiburg. I just think at the moment, at least, you know, going into the break, I think it's a bit of a toss-up of how they would perform against Munich, just because they've been stumbling as well in the league. I think just like in the last month, they've only gotten like one win out of their last 5 or 6 games, if I'm not wrong. But it could be a time for them to bounce back as well, especially they play them in the Pokal first, and then again in the league, and then that time away at Freiburg. So maybe Freiburg will have a little bit. They learn from, if they do lose in the Pokal, they learn from their mistakes and then come at them again. So, I mean, there's some nice fixtures here and there that Munich, or at least they're favorable to us. But yeah, I think for the most part, Munich maybe do have a little bit easier of a schedule. And even then, if they didn't, they're a team that very, very, very rarely drop points. So yeah, hit them, get the win, and then just focus on ourselves for the rest of the season.
We do also, the fact that we're out of Champions League also helps us a bit too, because we will have full weeks to recover. Despite, I mean, Pokal is the other thing, but like they're in that too. But so that does help us. I feel like I'm just grasping for all like the good things and like the positive outlooks to like back me up. I don't know, which I am, I guess. I don't want to get too caught up in that, but it just all plays into me being very excited and confident. But of course, Der Klassiker, Dortmund, Bayern is Saturday, April 1st, so we have the weekend off. Was there anything specifically you want to talk more about matchups? I was going to shout out the watch parties and that kind of stuff.
No, I was gonna get our predictions going, and then definitely the shout out for sure.
I'm going 2-1, late winner. I don't know who, but Dortmund winning 2-1 is my prediction. That's all I have to say.
That's
is that holding them to just one goal?
Bold of you to assume we'll only concede one in Munich. Well, I really hope that'd be the case, just one maximum. But I'm going to go, this is just me being optimistic here, hopeful, because I can't even describe what it would mean to actually win the title here. Not saying the winning that game would be the league decider, but anyway, I'm going to go 3-2.
All right, cool.
Two wins on our side. Let's go.
I will always predict a win. I'm never gonna not. So watch party. Obviously Carver and I, well, it may be not obvious if you're a new listener. First of all, shout out to you. Thank you. We appreciate it. Make sure you say hi on the socials, Twitter and Instagram at thebvbpod. Carver and I live in St. Louis, so our watch party spot is Amsterdam Tavern in the Tower Grove area with Brucey STL. Carver, I always let you pitch them and talk them up, and because you've been hanging with them a lot longer than me. So I don't know if you want to talk about that. Obviously the watch party is April 1st, Amsterdam Tavern for us. But if you just want to speak to the group and then being involved in groups and that kind of stuff. For any new Dortmund supporters, Bundesliga supporters and fans.
Yeah, any new listeners in the area or not in the area that's even considering to come to that game, I highly recommend it. I talk up the group a lot of just great group of people there. They're very inviting. They're very welcoming. They're very passionate about the club too. We have a great time at the bar always. And to rev it up even more, of course, you have Der Klassiker, but then you also have Dortmund announcing the official partnership of the watch party for April 1st. Unless something has changed, Nathan, I hope I'm also not spoiling something, so apologies if so, but Nathan, the founder of the group, told me that Emma will be there, which is the mascot of Dortmund, the bumblebee. So Emma will be there, which is cool. Maybe some other people, I'm not sure. But either way, I will be there, potentially Jake. And me, it should be enough already.
or just fellow people to watch Dortmund with. That's what you need.
In all seriousness, yeah.
No, we know that most of our listeners are not from St. Louis, so we're not just telling you like, hey, come to St. Louis, because we know not everyone who listens. Most people aren't here, but I know. Shout out to the Brooklyn Brusen, who I had the pleasure and honor of hanging and catching a game with earlier this season. Obviously, there's the guys in Kansas City, Orlando, I think Baltimore, and Charlotte. Some of the other people we've connected with. Just like encourage you to find this Dortmund supporters group in your area and go watch the game with them, because it's a lot more fun and it's a way better experience watching with fellow Dortmund fans, best fans in the entire world. So please get connected. There is a link in the description of this episode that will help you find a group or club near you in the city near you. And if for some reason you can't find a group, because I know when I went to Portland, I looked up on that little club locator thing and I couldn't find a group in Portland, but I know we have listeners in Portland, and a guy reached out after I went to Portland. So if you're like, oh, I don't know who to get connected with, just send us a DM and we'll do our best to help connect you with other people who might be watching in across the states or across, Dumbarton Brusen in Glasgow, right? Yeah. Those guys too. Overseas. So yeah, wherever you're listening, if you need help finding other Dortmund fans, we will help make that connection happen. And any supporters groups, we're having a party that we haven't shouted out, please reach out to us too, because we want to reshare your party and your watch party and everything on our socials. We want to spread the love and get people connected with the groups in the club. So
yeah, as I mentioned before, even if you're not in the area, if it's feasible, please just consider coming out to the watch party. I've already seen a handful of people online from Illinois side, from the Kansas City side, saying they're going to come down for that watch party. So even if you're not in St. Louis, I mean, obviously anyone's welcome. Would love to see you there.
Before we go, obviously it's the international break, and I was just going to quickly run through. Usually I'm a little more prepared, like who's playing what and where in the international matchups, but this international window is not that important. I'll throw it out there. So hopefully no one gets injured. And maybe I'll post the matches if there's anything exciting. But Gio Reyna obviously called up to USMNT. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, because with everything that's going on, surprisingly called up to the USMNT. Shout out to Wolf getting his first international call-up with Germany, alongside Nico Schlotterbeck and Emre Can getting a call-up too.
Yep.
Bit of German resurgence. Julian Rierson called up to Norway. I almost said Sweden. I was getting my those countries confused. Jude Bellingham with England, obviously, and Sebastian Aller. I know there's a lot of talk around this subject. Him going off to represent Ivory Coast. Obviously, the only talk was like the club was slightly hesitant because they've been helping in his recovery process so much. They kind of don't want to screw that up, but they're also not going to tell him he can't go.
Yeah, I was going to say
support and rep his country. It's such a big deal. And Thomas Meunier with Belgium and Salih Özcan with Turkey. Oh my gosh, I thought I was in. I'm like just swiping through their Instagram and it just keeps going. Rafael Guerreiro with Portugal. Dania Malling getting the call up with the Netherlands, and that is it. I finished.
Yeah. A lot of good call-ups, and that, it's nice and all, but please, for the love of God, everyone stay safe.
Yeah, and that's the good thing. Like, these games aren't that important, so hopefully no one gets injured. But if you do want to watch some soccer this weekend, it's always a bummer. International breaks that aren't important when it's like, man, I just really want to watch Dortmund and just like domestic football in general. But if you want to keep an eye out for those countries and our Dortmund players, whether you're just making sure they don't get injured, but those are the countries you can watch out for this weekend. Besides that, I don't really have anything else other than April 1st. It's going down. It's going down.
It is going down. And we will keep you updated on our socials, particularly Twitter, for any updates for contract extensions. The club has reportedly said that a lot of these extensions should be, for the most part, handled by April 1st. So there's a lot of news coming out in the next few days. I know our podcast is usually a few days behind for that kind of news. If not, sometimes we're usually like the day before we're talking about it. And then like those kind of news will happen right whenever the episode drops. But we both got full-time jobs. So anything that ever breaks, you'll see it firsthand on our Twitter, and then we'll talk about it on our show a few days after.
Carver just gave the pitch. Hey, follow our Twitter feed for news that is 3 days late.
I think that's my first plug for our social. I could be wrong. No, our Twitter is always up to date. It's just our show isn't.
Oh, the show. Well,
which probably isn't the best plug for the listeners, but
that's podcast. If you're listening, you should know we're recording this on a Tuesday night. So whatever news comes out on Wednesday, and if you're listening to this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, it's not our fault. Okay.
Yeah.
We try our best. Exciting times ahead. I can't wait for April 1st. It's so far away at this point, but yeah, I think that's it for the episode. We appreciate you guys listening. Again, the plugs. Everything is linked in the description of this episode at the BVB pod. It's just the pod at the BVB pod on Twitter and Instagram. Please reach out, especially if you need help finding a supporters group or club to watch with. And with that, we will see you later.
Peace.